Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. So again, welcome everyone. Hare Krishna. We're jumping in straight into it, so to speak. We do want to finish the third chapter this week because after Rath Yatra, next week there's not a class because we have Rath Yatra. And then you're going to have your little test on chapters 1 to 3. Yeah, that will be the Sunday after Rath Yatra. Okay, so we should finish chapter 3 today and make headways into chapter 4. Okay, so let's just have a couple of flashbacks. Just check in your notes, have a look in the Bhagavad Gita, and we have a couple of highlights from our last class, which was the week before last. Just a few words that we mentioned, some important focuses which we were speaking about. And those online, yes, excuse me, your voice will just come to me, then I shall relay to the class here because I forgot my speaker. So if anyone, so third chapter, what have we discussed? Karma, it's called Karma Yoga. So, but a little bit more, yeah, the chapter is called Karma Yoga, but a particular type of yoga. Yeah, this is the word that has been coming up a lot. Nishkam Karma Yoga, which means you may have some attachment to the work, but you're not attached to the fruits. Yeah. So that is a platform of Krishna consciousness, a platform of Krishna consciousness, perhaps a beginning stage. Yeah. Something else. That's one more. Yes, for sure. Oh, we need to use this. That's excuses, everyone. We have one of our major players missing today, and that's Jay Krishna. And he's normally on top of all this technical stuff.
Okay, what is the problem with the microphone?
We haven't turned it on.
Okay.
So what's your good name? So Neela's going to give us a little insight
about that. But we talked about devotional services where we are not attached to the fruit. We are doing it as seva. Yeah.
Yeah, okay, that's correct. There's a question particularly that Arjuna asks in the beginning of the third chapter, because Arjuna's become confused. Yeah, he thinks because Krishna has spoke about Shankhya, he spoke about principles of detachment. Yeah, so Arjuna is envisioning this to mean renunciation of the battle and leaving the battlefield. So he seems, from Arjuna's point of view, to be saying two things. But Krishna in this chapter is clarifying, no, I'm telling you to do one thing. Yeah, but with a specific mood of detachment. So that's why Krishna speaks about symptoms of a detached person in chapter 2. So Arjuna thought he was speaking about leaving, or he was speaking about Shankhya, or the classical practice of renunciation, which means leaving the battle. So this chapter, Krishna is clarifying Karma Yoga, and specifically Nishkam Karma Yoga. No, doing your duty, but being internally detached. So that's what we want in this world. Yeah? We have to do our duties, but we want to learn to be detached. Yeah. Okay, so that's the basic theme of where we're up to now. So we're going to go straight here, as far as I can remember. We left off at 26, I think, and we're just starting here. Okay, is that correct? Now, okay, if anyone has any questions online, please, you're quite happy to unmute, or please, please feel free to unmute, or you can put in a chat. I can see if you put something in the chat from here. Okay, so here we go. Okay, verse 27, Bhakti. Yeah. So this verse is there's several verses in the Gita that Krishna speaks about the karta. This is verse 27. The spirit soul who is bewildered by the influence of false ego thinks himself the doer of activities that are actually carried out by the three modes of material nature. So all the facilities, all the means, all the instruments for acting in this world is generally under one of the three modes of material nature. Yeah. Yeah. Somebody from the chat here, can you confirm? Mother Deepadatri, are you on the WhatsApp Zoom?
No, I can go on the
If you go, there's a question which is relevant. If you could answer that, yeah. Okay. So someone who is under the modes will think that he is the karta, he is the doer. We desire, but the empowerment and the facilities is given to us by echoed by the three modes of material nature. And Prabhupada in the purple, he takes it ultimately that everything, the three modes, is controlled by the Supreme Lord. So in that sense, everyone is ultimately under the control of Krishna. Okay. Then in text 28, Krishna is describing the difference between someone who's attached and it's someone who's working in devotion. Yeah. So one who is in knowledge of the absolute Almighty Arm does not engage himself in the senses and sense gratification, knowing well the difference between work in devotion and work for fruitive results. Yeah. There was a question in the chat about, you can't see? Oh, direct message. Oh, that's right. Can you confirm the changes for assignment dates, please? Both for essays and closed book. I don't know how many times we've put this up. What's that?
essays are still the same. It's just the exam testing.
Yeah, if you can send it in the WhatsApp group. Okay. So let's have some, might be easier if I read here. I'm going to read one part from Prabhupada's purple in text 28. Okay. The knower of the absolute truth is convinced of his awkward position in material association. He knows he is part and parcel of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, and that his position should not be in the material creation. He knows his real identity as part and parcel of the Supreme. You can follow this in your Gitas? Got it? Yeah. Who is eternal, bliss, and knowledge. And he realizes that somehow or other, he is entrapped in material conception of life. In his pure state of existence, he is meant to dovetail his activities in devotional service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. He therefore engages himself in the activities of Krishna consciousness and becomes naturally unattached to the activities of the material senses, which are all circumstantial and temporary. He knows that his material condition of life is under the supreme control of the Lord. Consequently, he is not disturbed by all kinds of material reactions, which he considers to be the mercy of the Lord. According to Srimad Bhagavatam, one who knows the absolute truth in three phrases, Brahman, Paramatma, and the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is called Tattvavit, for he knows his own factual position in relationship with the Supreme. Okay, so that's the difference between an attached worker. So the two persons in the workplace, one is attached and one is a devotee. Yeah, the devotional worker, you could say. Yeah, so this is the mentality of the devotional worker. Yeah, one who's in knowledge of the absolute Almighty Art. Yeah, so Prabhupada gives a summary of what that knowledge is and how they are situated in their occupational duty. All right? Is there any questions? Please feel free to ask.
I don't know
Yes,
if
someone's saying something, but
I don't know if you could hear me. I'm online.
yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah. So is it also the case that the people who are obviously bewildered by false ego are accumulating adverse karma through through a sort of binding lifestyle?
Yeah, so question is, someone who's influenced by false ego or working, then are they accumulating karma? Yes, our students here are nodding yes. Yes, generally, and unless one is directly working on the direction of Krishna, just like Arjuna is going to be working directly under the directions of Krishna. So therefore, there is no reaction. There is no karma for him. Yeah. Before that, Arjuna was under the misconception that he's engaging in the warfare, then he will get karma from that. But no. Yeah. That's okay. So we might not be completely free from the modes of material nature ourselves as practicing devotees. Yeah. We may be influenced by the modes of passion sometimes, the modes of ignorance as well, or even the mode of goodness. Yeah. So therefore, a devotional service may not always be so smooth. There may be some impediments. There may be some difficulties. Yeah. But ultimately, the devotee is protected by Krishna. Yeah. All right. Okay. So have a look at text 29. So, bewildered by the modes of material nature, the ignorant fully engage themselves in material activities and become attached. But they should not unsettle. But the wise should not unsettle them, though these duties are inferior due to the performer's lack of knowledge. Yeah. Yeah. So again, that person who is in knowledge, you spoke about how they see themselves and how they interact. But this is quite an interesting verse here. Yeah. Prabhupada says, men who are ignorant cannot appreciate activities in Krishna consciousness, and therefore Lord Krishna advises us not to disturb them and simply waste valuable time. But the devotees of the Lord, the more kind. So this is the interesting point that is not mentioned in the verse. So it's interesting, Prabhupada has put this in here, because this is Prabhupada's mood. It's compassion, and it's one of preaching. So he says here, but the devotees of the Lord are more kind than the Lord, because they understand the purpose of the Lord. Consequently, they undertake all kinds of risks, even the point of approaching ignorant men to try to engage them in the acts of Krishna consciousness, which are absolutely necessary for the human being. Yeah. So we try to engage people in Krishna consciousness, but at the same time, we're also aware of this point of how much we can engage people in Krishna consciousness. For some, it might be not preaching to them or telling them about the restrictions in Krishna consciousness and what they should stop doing immediately. But instead, we try to make friends with them we try to give them some prashadam. Yeah. So we do also take into consideration what Krishna is saying here. Yeah. Once again, bewildered by the modes of material nature, the ignorant fully engage themselves in material activities, but the wise should not unsettle them. The next verse describes, I think, that we should engage them in acts of devotion, like eating prashadam, you know. Depends who you're speaking to. And that's what Krishna says here. Okay. Okay, now we've been describing Nishkam Karma Yoga. Now in this next verse, this next verse is predominantly basically about bhakti. Yeah. So therefore, O Arjuna, surrendering all your works unto me, with full knowledge of me, without desires for profit and no claims for proprietorship, and free from lethargy, fight. Yeah. So this means here, one, without desires for profit. So that's working, not influenced by the mode of passion. Yeah, and with no claims to proprietorship. And free from lethargy means not being free of the lower modes, of the mode of ignorance. Because in ignorance, one can't be bothered to do anything. I think here, Prabhupada speaks, if you look in the purple, Prabhupada says, Arjuna was therefore ordered by Krishna to fight, as if the Lord were his military commander. Yeah. So sometimes that is needed. So he's being asked by Krishna just to fight. Don't be influenced by the mode of passion. Don't be influenced by the mode of ignorance, but just do how I'm instructing you. Yeah. So in other words, surrendering your works unto me. So this surrendering your works unto me is directly bhakti. Yeah. It's above nishkam karma. So don't worry about the results. Don't worry about anything. You just follow my order. But sometimes it helps. That's why it's good to have some authorities in Krishna consciousness. You may have the spiritual master, so he's directing you. You have no need to consider. You just have to follow. Yeah. Let's just read the rest here. One has to sacrifice everything, 1 second, for the goodwill of the Supreme Lord, and at the same time discharge prescribed duties without claiming proprietorship. Arjuna did not have to consider the order of the Lord. He had only to execute his order. Yeah. Is that your wish is my command? What's that saying? I think Napoleon said or something. Don't ask why, but just do or die. Don't ask why, you should just do or die. So Krishna's speaking quite heavily to Arjuna here in this verse. Okay? Free from lethargy. Jivra, yeah, just fight. Vigata Javraha. Right? So he's okay. So here we are, text 31. Perhaps we could have someone read a bit. Someone could just read the translation. Perhaps someone here. Someone here. We've got hundreds of devotees present here today. Just read the translation to text 31. Anyone? Someone?
Yeah, because it might get my head.
Those persons who execute their duties according to my injunctions and who follow this teaching faithfully without envy become free from the bondage of fruitive actions.
All right, so by following what Krishna just said in text 30, this is the result, which is you will become free from bondage. Yeah. So Krishna is speaking here about faithful knowledge. Yeah. And a non-envious person. Yeah. And go to next verse. You could 32 now. You read 32. Now this, so on the other hand, if one doesn't follow Krishna's shiksha,
32.
speaking to the
32, text 32 translation. But those who out of envy disregard these teachings and do not follow them are to be considered bereft of all knowledge, be fooled and ruined in their endeavors for perfection.
okay. So then the question might come then, why do people who transgress your desire, yeah, not fear punishment? As criminals should fear punishment from a king. And then the next verse. Perhaps you could read text 33.
Even a man of knowledge acts according to his own nature, for everyone follows nature he has acquired from the three modes. What can repression accomplish?
Yeah. But sometimes this is misunderstood, this verse, as being an excuse for engaging in all types of sensual activity. Yeah. That's not what is meant here. It's meant one's got a particular type of nature according to the three modes. Just like Arjuna, he is a Kshatriya. So better than repressing his Kshatriya-like nature, he should engage it in the service of the Lord. Yeah, what can repression accomplish? As mentioned many times in the Bhagavad Gita, we should always want to be in control of our lower nature. Lust, anger, and greed lead to hell. But your particular nature, which you have, according to your body, according to your situation, better to engage that. Yeah. Yes, such a monument.
Just a question here for maybe like part of your realization, but what I've been finding is that in the Vedic astrology, if you do like a chart, especially if you calculate the moon chart, it talks about the nature, and it gives Brahman, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra, according to the place and the time and the day of birth. So I'm wondering, is that the same nature that it's talking about here? Because that seems as though that according to the astrology, sometimes it's a bit vague as to what is my nature. Can we accept that the Vedic astrology of moon sign would be the indication?
Yeah, it could well be if you get the right astrologer. Yeah. So yeah. So therefore, but you should engage that nature. Basically, the point here is not difficult to be inactive. We should rather that process is not being inactive. Say again, like Arjuna, it is not his nature. Yeah, he needs a battle. he needs to rule. Yeah. So what can repression accomplish?
Isn't it saying, sorry, Murli Prabhu, when Krishna is saying acquired from the three modes, he's talking about the numerous accumulations of previous lives in the modes, right? So that's led to your current dharma.
You led to your current. Go on.
Let's say my last life, I had tendencies to fight for justice and I was a bit of mode of goodness and a little bit of passion, and then eventually the nature, the dharma of this life, my essential nature in this life, based on the previous lives, is what I Krishna is saying, effectively use that towards me, use that for me. Your natural, everyone.
That is the message, you could say, of the Bhagavad Gita, and that's what we're learning here. Yeah, correct. Like here, so in other words, so despite Maya, despite one's intelligence, it has the potency to push a conditioned soul away from Krishna consciousness. Yeah. Now the next sloka is going to say, so if we're all helplessly forced to act according to our natures, then what is the use of so many rules of Sastra to regulate our activities? We're going to be pushed. So this is the next sloka. So let's read the next sloka here. Okay, Sachikavanima, you could read this sloka as well, 34.
There are principles to regulate attachment and aversion pertaining to the senses and their objects. One should not come under the control of such attachment and aversion because they are stumbling blocks in the path of self-realization.
Okay. I'll read a little bit from Prabhupada's purport. Unrestricted sense enjoyment is the cause of material engagement. But one who follows the rules and regulations of the real scriptures does not become entangled by sense objects. Okay. So it says here, as you see the salt pot here, it's a bit like salt. So, okay, we have to regulate our conditioned nature and regulate it according to Sastra. Yeah. But those regulations in Sastra, which is given, we should not become attached to that. They're supposed to regulate us, so at some point we come to the point of detachment. Yeah. For instance, there's the Grihastha ashram. So rather than having illicit sex life, yeah, which entangles one in the material world, do it through an ashram, and it's regulated. But the idea is that you do it in a regulated way, and you're developing Krishna consciousness. So you shouldn't become attached to that regulation as well. You understand? Like here, I'll just continue reading. For example, Prabhupada says here, for example, sex enjoyment is a necessity for the conditioned soul. And sex enjoyment is allowed under the license of marriage ties, according to scriptural injunctions. According to scriptural injunctions, one is forbidden to engage in sex relationships with any woman other than one's wife. All other women are to be considered one's mother. But in spite of such injunctions, a man is still inclined to have sex relationships with other women. These propensities are to be curbed. Otherwise, there will be stumbling blocks on the path of self-realization. Okay. So there are principles. Okay, so one is pushed, one is conditioned by Maya, one is forced to act. Okay, so we're not speaking about, again, back to that verse, what can repression accomplish? At least regulate it according to Vedic injunction. Yeah, and that will lead you eventually to become free from bondage. Yeah. Yeah.
My bodies, they use a similar principle with the Lord. Say, have the deity or the deities, but only up until a certain point to free your mind, rather than that Krishna is the Bhagwan Swayam. They don't accept, so they respect the temple, they come, but only to the point of now they're in the liberal worship.
Yeah, how's it connected to this?
In the sense, I was thinking you're saying that these rules are there to get you to a certain point.
Yeah.
They themselves don't become the attachment. Whereas reversely, Krishna from the beginning is our soul attachment. We don't use the process of bhakti just to get to a point of liberation and then that's the lot.
No, yeah. Nayan's speaking about the path of the impersonalists, or the path of the Mayavadi, who just use principles of bhakti and so-called just to go to some state of impersonal realization. No, it's not like that. The means is the end, you know? Yeah. Okay, so let's now he comes rid of a summary. I can just read this part here. It is far better to discharge one's prescribed duties, even though faultily. Now this verse comes up twice. It comes up 2 times in Bhagavad Gita. More or less the same words. Yeah. It is better to discharge one's prescribed duties, even though faultily, than other duties perfectly. Destruction in the course of performing one's own duty is better than engaging in another's duty, for to follow another's path is dangerous. Right? So quite something difficult perhaps to comprehend today. Yeah. But here, duty is considered very important as a means of purification, even if there seems to be difficulties in doing one's duty. One should not give it up. One reason, because one's heart will not become purified. So that difficulty which you face from doing your duty, if you still do your duty, that's going to cleanse your heart. That's going to purify you. That's going to give you detachment. It's going to give you wisdom as well, because you're going through it and you're tolerating all the difficulty. Why? Because it's your duty. So then you become a little bit detached. But if it just gets difficult and you take up someone else's duty, even if you can do their duty better than your own duty, you see. Also, it causes confusion in society. I mean, now society is completely confused. But say here in this context, person's duties were quite clearly defined, more than what they are now. As Nayan, who was it? Nayan was asking how to understand our nature. It's kind of bewildering. What is our duty? We have to these comes about the goodness, to see through the mess and see who we actually are. Yeah. But in the times here, things are a bit more. So if Arjuna doesn't do his duty, then other persons are going to follow him as well. Yeah. So Krishna is saying this here. Better discharge one's own prescribed duties, even though faultedly, even if there's some difficulty. Yeah. Than another duties perfectly. Destruction in the course of performing one's own duty is better than engaging in another's duty. For to follow another's path is actually dangerous. Yeah. Any questions from this week?
Yeah, I think the other point is that following another path is basically a form of searching for sense gratification, which is supposed to be exhausting your nature by giving it up to Krishna, not accumulating new karmas through new tendencies to chase.
Yeah, so it's a good point. So Abhijit is mentioning that if you follow another's path, then you're going to, which is not your path, you're just going to become more entangled in the material world. You know? So practically speaking, I can give an example. According to our karma, according to our condition, there's a certain path of life that is mapped out for us, you know, for us, that we can follow. But if we observe someone else following another path, and we're having difficulties with our path in life, and we try to emulate or copy someone else, then that could cause problems. Yeah? That could cause difficulties. But it's quite a subject on one's nature. And, yeah.
I was caught a little bit on this thing where he's saying about dangerous. I was thinking, well, what is the danger? Like Prabhupada said, what's the difficulty? But then I was thinking, if we use the analogy of a doctor's prescription, it kind of makes sense that following somebody else's prescription could actually be dangerous.
Yeah.
Rather than following your own.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Everyone heard that what Satyakumar said. So we have our you can't hear it? Online, you couldn't hear what he just said? Is that microphone working?
Yes.
Yeah, it looks like.
We can hear, but it seems faint. I'm not sure if the microphone is working. It seems like it's coming through your
It's coming
microphone.
through, but
very
it's coming
probably.
through very faint. So anyway, I just try and repeat what Sajid said. He said we can look at it just like you have a particularly, you have a doctor's prescription if you're sick. But if you try to follow another person's prescription, it's, you're going to get more sick. So better to follow your own prescription that you have from the doctor. Yeah. Rather, otherwise it could be, it's dangerous. Then you're walking on thin ice, so to speak. You know.
Until you get to the Bhakti lifestyle prescription, which works for everyone, which is your
Yes, till we get to the Bhakti. This is Bhakti life prescription, which works for everyone. Yeah, 90.
Practical reality is like you're living in cities, which the vast majority of people do, market economies, then you have to kind of be dictated a little bit by what the market requires. Because if you say I want to go and do X profession, there's too many of those. In order to pay your rent, you have to dive into something.
Yeah, Nayan's bringing up the point that it may be difficult to actually follow your specific dharma according to need and necessity today. You got to pay the bills, man, and you may not be able to get a job you want immediately, but you may get paid if you stack shelves in Tesco's. Right, so that's the whole subject in of itself. I won't go into it, but you need to find some outlet to actually do what you like doing, even if you're in a circumstance where you're not properly engaged according to your nature. It'll be good to find some outlet at some time where you can happily do what you are naturally attracted to do, art or whatever it may be, you know, assisting people, helping people. Yeah. Okay. So now Arjuna he's going to ask, so having heard this, you know, Arjuna is going to ask an important question here. So hearing, say, for instance, text 34, okay. Yes, from today onward, I will steadily do my duty, because we heard about the importance of doing duty, and control my attachments and aversions. I will act only according to Sastra. But experience, however, teaches that immediate inspirations sometimes prove difficult to adhere to over time. So Arjuna, he's aware of this. So then he asks the next question. We follow? So it's been established that you should regulate yourself through Sastra. But even doing that, we see some persons are forced to act against Sastra. Yeah, yeah, please, yeah. We follow? So this is the next question. I need to go, see how far we got to go. Yeah, okay. So then Arjuna asked this question, which is here. I can read it here. Arjuna said, O descendant of Vrishni, by what is one impelled to sinful acts, even if unwillingly, as if engaged by force? Okay. All right, so we got Sastra, but we see that persons are forced to act. I think we all know what answers are coming next in this part of the third chapter. Yeah. Okay, let me just. So Prabhupada writes, sinful actions are not, however, impelled by the supersoul within, but are another cause. And that's what's going to be explained next. Yeah. What is it that forces one to act in sinful ways? You know? Good question from Arjuna. So this is the last section of the third chapter. So someone, perhaps someone online, you could read text 37 for us. Those here on site, you can all look at that verse. Just read the translation.
The Supreme Personality of Godhead
Thank
said,
you.
"It is lust only, Arjuna, which is born of contact with the material mode of passion, and later transformed into wrath, and which is the all-devouring sinful enemy of this world."
Yeah, so it is lust only, Arjuna, which born of contact with the material mode of passion, and later transformed to anger, which is the all-devouring sinful enemy of this world. Okay. So if you ask anyone in Palestine, who are the enemies? They will say, the Israelis. If you ask anyone in Russia, who are the enemies? They will say, the Ukrainians. Vice versa. Yeah. If you ask, it goes on and on and on, But here's the real enemy. It's lust. Yeah. So lust is more subtle than anger, Okay, here. And a man of lusty intentions may go undetected, as opposed to someone who's angry. An angry person, however, is easily noticed. Lust inevitably turns into anger because it cannot be satisfied. Yeah. I think the next verse. It burns like fire. Yeah? And fire, like it is all devouring. It is a fuel. If fuel is added to the fire, rather than satisfying the fire, it makes the fire burn more fiercely. Yeah. So Prabhupada explains here, if therefore the mode of passion, instead of being degraded into the mode of ignorance, is elevated to the mode of goodness by the prescribed method of living, as Abhijat said, as prescribed method of bhakti, of living and acting, one can be saved from the degradation of wrath by spiritual attachment. The next verse is going to explain similar. Yeah. So these examples given here explain the order of increasing degrees of this covering of lust. So I'll read this one here. As fire is covered by smoke, as mirror is covered by dust, or as the embryo is covered by the womb, the living entity is covered by different degrees of this lust. Right? So there's a progression here. So as fire covered by smoke, this is a thin covering, because you can still see the heat and the light, yeah? It's a thin covering. Now when a mirror is covered by dust, it's a bit thicker, so you cannot see your reflection properly. Yeah. The thickest covering is the embryo around the womb. The child within the womb can neither move nor be seen. And I think Prabhupada in the purple, he describes that the non-moving entities compares this last one to the non-moving living entities, the trees, then the dust-covered mirror to birds and beasts, and the smoke-covered fire to those in the human form. Then Prabhupada concludes here, he says, in the human form of life, one can conquer the enemy lust by cultivation of Krishna consciousness under able guidance. Yeah, so the enemy is further described in this verse. Someone online could read this verse again. Text 39. Where is this enemy situated? Krishna speaks about this. Yeah.
Thus, the wise living entity's pure consciousness becomes covered by his eternal enemy in the form of lust, which is never satisfied and which burns like fire.
Yeah. So I read again from Prabhupada's purport. It is said in the Manohara that lust cannot be satisfied by any amount of sense enjoyment, just as fire is never extinguished by a constant supply of fuel. In the material world, the center of all activities is sex. Thus, this material world is called Maitunya Agraha, or the shackles of sex life. In an ordinary prison house, criminals are kept within bars. Similarly, the criminals who are disobedient to the laws of the Lord are shackled by sex life. Advancement of material civilization is the basis of sense gratification, means increasing duration of material existence of a living entity. Therefore, this material world, therefore, this lust is a symbol of ignorance for which living entities kept within the material world. While one enjoys sense gratification, it may be that there is some feeling of happiness, but actually, that so-called feeling of happiness is the ultimate enemy of the sense enjoyer. Okay, and then here, fine. So someone can read text 40 for us. And the microphone's not working enough, so perhaps I can just read this one. I represent devotees here. The senses, the mind, and intelligence. So where the enemy is situated, the senses, the mind, and intelligence are the sitting places of this lust. Yeah. Through them, lust covers the real knowledge of the living entity and bewilders him. Yeah. So one's intelligence or one's mind is absorbed with impressions and thoughts, for example, of sensual activities. Yeah. And one's intelligence is thinking how to, when to, how to. So the intelligence is captured and the mind is captured. Yeah. The senses are attracted, the mind is absorbed, and the intelligence is planning. So that really that covers one's real sense of identity as a soul. Yeah? Because one is just ensnared, yeah, in this attachment, which can never be satisfied. That's what's quite maddening about it. It can never be fully satisfied. It just leads to frustration. Yes.
I was just thinking, as humans, we may look at little animals like little rodents or hamsters going around in little wheels and just thinking it's stupid or it's a bit crazy. So I'm thinking, from my understanding, in the heavenly planets, there's no lust. So the denizens of the heavenly planets are looking down at us and thinking, these people are crazy, like marching up and down Oxford Street trying to fulfill these things. But it cannot be. So where are you going to get them?
Yeah, Nayan's explaining about how the demigods are looking down at struggle in the material world, but actually being enslaved to lust, etc. But actually the demigods are also not, they're kind of mixed, they're not Sudha Bhaktas. So they have a tendency to be overcome by lust. Yeah. There's a story of Indra, the story. And he's the king of the demigods. And he's got 1,000 eyes. There's a whole story how he got 1,000 eyes. He wasn't eyes to begin with. We won't describe it. So the best that vision coming from the spiritual world, looking down, where they feel compassion for those who are, conditioned. Yeah. All right. So what to do? Okay, Krishna has explained the problem, but what to do? That's text 40. That's text 41. Okay, let's read that. Perhaps someone online could read text 41.
Therefore, O Arjun, best of the Bharatas, in the very beginning curb this great symbol of sin, lust, by regulating the senses, and slay this destroyer of knowledge and self-realization.
All right. By regulating the senses, again, back to this point of regulation. Yeah. And let's just read these two verses as well. The same person who read, you can read these two verses, 42 and 43.
Yeah. The working senses are superior to dull matter. Mind is higher than the senses. Intelligence is still higher than the mind, and he, the soul, is even higher than the intelligence. Thus, knowing oneself to be transcendental to the material senses, mind, and intelligence, O mighty armed Arjun, one should steady the mind by deliberate spiritual intelligence, Krishna consciousness, and thus, by spiritual strength, conquer this insatiable enemy known as lust.
Okay. So we will have the ability is to, despite the conditioning, despite the pushings of the modes of material nature, if we're to that degree we're strongly engaged in Krishna consciousness, we can take reins on ourself. We can take reins on our lower nature, yeah, on our conditioned nature. Yeah? This is what we're being encouraged to do, because practically speaking, we are the boss, so to speak. We are the soul. So if we're Krishna conscious, we have the ability to rein the minds in. Remember we read that second chapter, like withdrawing the limbs within the shell? Yeah. So that's what's being spoken of here. The soul can actually observe the conditioned self. Yeah. Like when you say you're angry, you judge yourself to be angry or envious. Yeah. That's the soul commenting on your conditioned mind, on the state of your subtle body. You understand? So now I'm happy. That's the soul commenting on the present nature of your subtle body. Yeah, it's very subtle. It is subtle. Or I'm angry. Or now I'm feeling lusty. Yeah. Now, if we practice Krishna consciousness and we have a regulated sattvic life, we can start to discriminate between the mind and the soul. You follow? Especially if our mind, if we have buddhi, if our mind is sharpened by regular study of scripture and hearing from devotees, we'll be able to make that discrimination as a soul and feel lust and choose to ignore it and choose to turn away from it, knowing what it's going to lead to. Yeah, so that's what Krishna is saying here. The working, still higher than the mind is the soul. It's even higher than the intelligence. Thus, knowing oneself to be transcendental, Almighty Arm, one should steady the mind by deliberate spiritual intelligence, which is Krishna consciousness, and by spiritual strength, conquer this insatiable enemy known as lust. Yeah. So we have some hope. Yes. Hare Krishna.
No, I was just going to ask, because you mentioned there about we can see it and then we can choose to ignore the lust. And I'm wondering, is it a question of ignoring it or dovetailing it in Krishna's service?
Yeah, Sajkumar Nima is asking the question. Okay, so we can identify lust and we decide to turn and we say to turn away from it. But he's saying, is it a case of identifying it and purifying it? Yeah. So that has to be done with intelligent discrimination. Yes, if it's to such an extent that it's a constant agitation that you're living with, then you might want to think very carefully and plan very specifically how you're going to regulate it, how you're going to engage that in a dharmic way. So speaking about the Grihastha ashram, yeah, rather than it haunting you 24 hours a day, then you want to at least you're going to, okay, so at least let me regulate this monster. Let me accept responsibility for the outcome of it. And that's going to naturally bring me to the state, once you actually deal with the consequences of it, then you're going to be naturally sense of detachment. Yeah. So you understand? So it's, but even within the Grihastha ashram, then you're still going to have to try to regulate yourself. Yeah.
But
at least
you
have,
can,
at least it's there in some type of regulation, but it should be done in a religious way. That it's not going to take you away from Krishna consciousness. Sorry, someone online?
yeah, and also you can also cheat because spiritual intelligence means bhakti, and the more you sort of do your devotional activities, the more Krishna is going to start controlling your senses.
Yeah, Rishikesha. Yeah, so Krishna is one of the names is Rishikesh. Yeah. So by engaging those senses in Krishna's service, then he's going to direct us accordingly. Yeah. But it's not so easy because we have the three modes of material nature to contend with. Yeah. That's why we should always keep ourselves spiritually strong. Sohil, you have your hand up there?
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. I wanted to ask is what would be higher? Would the soul be higher, or would it be spiritual intelligence or transcendental intelligence?
So Sohil's asking, what would be higher? Is it the soul or is it transcendental intelligence that's higher? Interesting question. Basically, it's the soul is transcendental intelligence. It is not separate. Yeah. So in answer, yeah, if you have again, once if you have the you have the intelligence, but what directs the intelligence is ultimately the soul. Yeah. So we can direct, so we can choose to direct ourselves. Yeah. To absorb ourselves in transcendental knowledge, which is the next chapter. Yeah. So the soul is above everything. Yeah. Now, when the soul acts according to the directions of, when the soul controls the mind and acts according to the directions of Sastri, then one is directly in tune with the super soul. And that's mentioned in Gita as well, that the super soul is reached when the mind is controlled. Because you're taking direction from the Supreme. Now, it's very subtle. It's not like you can hear in your heart, okay, turn left, turn right, do this, do that. You just spontaneously and automatically, if your mind is controlled, you are acting according to the super soul within the heart. Yeah. So in that sense, the soul is it manifests as transcendental intelligence coming from the Paramatma, which you are following. Okay, does that help?
Yes, Prabhu, thank you.
Yeah. All right, so that completes chapter 3. Hare Krishna. Hare Bol. Hare Krishna.
I'm just looking with regard to this last thing. I mean, sometimes people like doom and gloom. People a little bit doom and gloom, but I was thinking, my realizations came that how kind is Krishna, because he's given the root cause of it, he's given the symptom of it, he's given the solution of it, and he's put it in where it fits in terms of how dangerous it is, and then how to get out of it as well. So no real complaints, is there, or excuses? Like everything has been given, even if one is really struggling or finding it hard, there's light because you know what to do next.
Yeah, this is did anyone hear that? It's okay to the microphone. Just put your hands up if you heard what Nine said. Okay, great.
Hare Krishna, yes, we had.
Okay, thank you.
Prabhu, for the other microphone, if somebody would just click the button on it, the button at the bottom, it should work just once.
I think there's a problem with the battery inside, I think.
Okay.
Okay, so what we'll do here, it's we'll stop a bit earlier than usual. Normally stop at 12 o'clock, but we'll stop here because we're just going to go into the 4th chapter, and we'll take a break for 15 minutes, okay? So come back at 10:02, yeah? Is that okay with everyone? So we're tuning in again at 10 to 12, and we'll begin chapter 4, okay? Hare Krishna.